The lecture hall smelled faintly of sterilized plastic and damp fabric, the scent clinging to the walls like a stubborn memory. Half the seats were designed for species that didn't sit padded cradles, levitating cushions, or simple floating spheres with adjustable gravity fields. The remaining seats were rigid, Earth-designed chairs that creaked under pressure, and still had the faint outline of property of Stanford University etched into their legs. Professor Malvec, a tall, gelatinous creature whose body slightly shimmered under the artificial light, was halfway through a lecture on comparative physiology when he raised a tendril toward the holographic slide. And here we see the standard circulatory response of a Terran mammal to external trauma, he said, pointing at an image of a bloodied human arm. Note the clotting factor and the involuntary pain reflex. Fascinatingly primitive. Primitive? A low voice muttered from the back. It was Howrick Rourke, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, eyebrows raised just enough to express mild offense. Malvec turned. Ah, yes, Mr. Rourke. Not meant as insult. Merely academic. Howrick let out a breath through his nose. Sure. Just don't call us primitive while showing a picture of my cousin's arm after a skiing accident. The rest of the class, mostly aliens, from translucent-skinned Virections to sharp-eyed Frelk, remained silent, but a few exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable to humans. Among them was a thin, pale creature with skin like polished marble and limbs that bent with too many joints. His name was Zenel, a first-year exchange student from the planet Creso. Zenel blinked his vertical pupils slowly. You bleed on purpose, yes. Howrick tilted his head. What? Zenel repeated the question, this time more carefully. You intentionally remove blood from your body. Voluntarily. For donation. Yeah, Howrick said. We donate blood. To help others. Hospitals use it for surgeries, trauma cases, stuff like that. Zenel's third eyelid fluttered. Your biology permits this? Howrick raised an eyebrow. Well, yeah. We make more. It's not like we just run out. Zenel slowly turned back, sitting a little straighter in his cradle. He looked mildly disturbed. 2 days later, Howrick stood in line at the interspecies medical wing, a clipboard tucked under his arm and a red stress ball shaped like a miniature Earth in his hand. The blood drive was part of Earth Culture Week, a diplomatic effort to build familiarity between species through shared experiences. Unfortunately, most of those experiences were limited to food tastings, lectures, or awkward dance demonstrations. The blood donation drive had been his idea. Are you sure this is safe? A voice asked. Howrick turned. Zenel stood behind him, his long fingers clasped nervously in front of his chest. Yeah, Howrick said. Been doing this since I was 18. I'm O-negative universal donor. Zenel's mouth opened slightly, as if to speak, then closed again. Look, Howrick said. If you're here to watch, that's cool. Just don't freak out. I do not intend to freak out, Zenel said, frowning. I am here to understand. He followed Howrick through the sterile white hallway past a few other humans chatting with nurses and sipping juice boxes. The room buzzed with quiet conversation and the occasional beep of a monitor. A few alien observers hovered near the walls, murmuring among themselves. Howrick sat down in one of the reclining chairs and rolled up his sleeve. A nurse approached, checked his ID tag, and began prepping his arm. Still good with needles? She asked. Long as you don't miss the vein this time, Howrick said. Zenel stood at the foot of the chair, watching closely. His pupils narrowed to slits as the needle was inserted. A small tube filled rapidly with dark red liquid, coiling neatly into a collection bag. Zenel's body went rigid. Is that normal? He asked, voice thin. Yes, Howrick said calmly. This is routine. Zenel's eyes rolled back. He collapsed. The sound of his body hitting the floor was muffled, but the reaction was immediate. A nurse ran over while Howrick sat up too fast, tugging at the tubing in his arm. Don't move, the nurse said. He fainted, Howrick said. Get him on his side. A medical drone zipped in from the hallway, locking its sensors on Zenel's limp form. A pair of mechanical arms extended, scanning his vitals. Stable, the drone announced. Fainting due to neurovascular synchronization failure. Non-life-threatening. Zenel groaned, shifting slightly. Shouldn't have come, Howrick muttered. Damn it. The nurse gently pushed him back down. You need to finish the donation. You're halfway there. Halric gritted his teeth. Fine. But someone better make sure he's okay. I'm okay, Zenel croaked from the floor. Mostly. You're really not, Halric muttered. Zenel was helped into a sitting position against the wall, a cold pack pressed to his forehead. He glanced at the half-full blood bag dangling beside Halric and looked away quickly. You continue even after trauma? He asked. It's not trauma, Halric said. It's helping people. People I'll never meet. Kids in accidents. Soldiers. Old folks in surgery. You pass out, I fill a pint. That's how this works. Zenel stared at him. I do not understand. You deliberately suffer. You risk weakness. For strangers. Halric squeezed the stress ball again. Yeah. It's not about liking it. It's about it needing to be done. Later that evening, back in the dormitory lounge, Zenel sat stiffly on the edge of a couch while Halric sipped a protein shake. I reviewed your medical practices, Zenel said. Your species has entire institutions dedicated to voluntary blood sacrifice. Blood donation, Halric corrected. Semantics, Zenel replied. I also discovered you do this while injured, sick, or recovering from childbirth. Not all the time, Halric said. There's screening. Rules. But yeah, people still show up. Because someone's always in worse shape. Zenel sat quietly for a moment. Our species does not share blood, he said finally. It is sacred. Contained. To lose it is a disgrace. Yeah, well, Halric said, we lose a lot of it. Wars. Accidents. Car crashes. You either get used to it or you don't make it. Zenel looked at the floor. I fainted. Halric shrugged. Happens. I have 8 hearts, Zenel muttered. And I fainted. Halric laughed. Then winced. Well, maybe next time don't watch a guy bleed into a bag. Zenel narrowed his eyes. There will not be a next time, but I would like to understand more. Not observe, but participate. In theory. Wait, Halric said slowly. You want to donate blood? No, Zenel said quickly. But I want to understand why you do. Halric stood. Then come with me next week. I volunteer at the recovery wing. You'll see what the blood's used for. Zenel hesitated, then nodded. The following week, they entered the recovery center together. It was quiet, filled with low murmurs and the occasional beep. A young woman with bandages around her chest sat reading a book. A boy with missing fingers played a video game with his toes. That's Darren, Halric said. Car crash. Blood loss was critical. He got 4 transfusions. 2 pints were from me. Zenel watched the boy laugh at something on the screen. That's why we do it, Halric said. Now you've seen both sides. Zenel didn't faint that day. But when he left, he walked a little slower, his posture less rigid. Halric watched him go, then glanced at his schedule. Next blood drive was in 2 weeks. He'd be there. Because this was routine. The door to the rehabilitation ward hissed open just wide enough for Halric to squeeze through sideways, balancing a tray with a plastic pitcher of citrus electrolyte drink and a stack of mismatched cups. The lights were dimmed to accommodate the patients with photoreceptive skin, and the air buzzed faintly with the low hum of filtration units. A Crevellan nurse passed him with a nod, her 6 eyes tracking him without pause as she glided toward a console. Zenel trailed a few feet behind Halric, clutching a datapad against his chest like a life vest. His gait was careful as though proximity to injuries might prove contagious. Don't stare, Halric muttered without turning. I am not staring, Zenel whispered. I am documenting. You're staring, Halric said. You've been documenting the same patient for 4 minutes. Zenel's eyes flicked to the left. He appears to be regrowing a limb. He is, Halric said. That's Juno. Lost the arm in a mining accident on Ares 12. He's on full graft therapy. Human donor marrow helps accelerate regrowth. That's why I asked you to come. Zenel took 1 step closer, squinting at the exposed lattice of artificial scaffolding beneath Juno's translucent sleeve. You implant foreign DNA into your own species. Halric poured a cup of the drink and handed it to a young woman with bandages across her throat. She nodded, her voice still hoarse from surgery. Not just ours, he said. We've used xenogeneic treatments too. But nothing beats compatible human blood products. That's why we store so much of it. For cases like this. Zenel's fingers twitched against the datapad. A low, scratchy voice interrupted. You always giving lectures? Or just when I can't walk away? Halric turned. Nice to see you too, Sergeant. Sergeant Lexa Darnell raised herself slightly on the bed with a wince. One of her legs was encased in a carbon fiber exosplint, the other completely absent from the knee down. A thin tube ran from her neck into a small, humming machine beside the bed. Still bleeding me dry? She asked. Her lips dry but pulled into something close to a grin. Nope, Halric said. You've got your own stash. I'm just the delivery guy today. He handed her a cup. She sipped, grimaced, sipped again. Zenel stared. Lexa noticed. Friend of yours? She asked. Sort of, Halric said. He fainted last week. Lexa lifted an eyebrow. What did you do? Gave blood. She blinked. Then laughed, a short bark that turned into a cough. You fainted at a blood draw, she wheezed. Oh, that's rich. Zenel's pupils narrowed. Such reactions are involuntary. So's getting shot, Lexa said. Still gotta deal with it. Zenel stepped closer to her bed. Is that why you are here? Shot? No. Stepped on a proximity mine. Didn't go off right away. Gave me time to yell at the rookie to run before it popped. Zenel looked down at her leg, then at the machine. And you are still capable of mirth. Lexa leaned back. Better than crying about it, right? Zenel's eyes didn't blink. Your species utilizes humor as a coping mechanism for trauma. We call it dark comedy, Halric said. It's not for everyone. I have noticed, Zenel muttered. A beeping sound interrupted them. The machine beside Lexa displayed a flashing icon. A nurse stepped in, scanned the display, then adjusted a dial on the transfusion unit. Blood pressure stable, the nurse said. You'll be scheduled for another unit at cycle change. Lexa waved her off. Thanks, Fran. Zenel turned to Halric. She receives blood in cycles? Yeah, Halric said. Her body's still rebuilding. Bone grafts, skin patches, vascular reconnections. Needs constant support. Zenel looked back at the nurse. How many donors does she require? Fran paused at the door. She's gone through 6 so far. Might need 2 more before the week's out. Zenel's datapad slipped slightly in his grip. You all right? Halric asked. Zenel didn't answer. He walked to a nearby chair and sat down stiffly, staring at the floor. Lexa watched him. First time around trauma? I have studied injuries, Zenel said. But I did not anticipate the volume. Halric pulled over another chair and sat down beside him. It's not the blood that gets most people, he said. It's realizing how much of it we lose and still survive. Zenel didn't respond. Lexa took another sip. It's not just survival. It's what we do after. I lost my leg, sure. But I kept the rookie alive. That trade was worth it. Zenel turned to Halric. You consider this normal? Not normal, Halric said. Expected. When things go wrong, we don't wait around. We patch each other up and move forward. Lexa pointed her cup at him. And we laugh while doing it. A few hours passed. The ward quieted as patients slept or drifted into sedation. The lights shifted to a gentle blue hue. Zenel remained in his chair, unmoving, eyes flicking between the monitors and the patients. At some point, Halric stood and stretched. Come on. I want to show you something. They left the ward and took a lift down 3 levels. The corridor here was narrower, walls lined with frosted panels. Halric keyed open a door labeled Archive Storage B. Inside, rows of refrigeration units hummed softly. Each unit bore a code, a name, and an expiration date. This is the reserve, Halric said. 1 of 6 on this station. Mostly human blood. Some Xena-compatible plasma. Every bag in here is tagged to a donor. Zenel stepped forward, examining the labels. You preserve parts of yourselves in anticipation of disaster. Yeah, Halric said. Because disaster's not a surprise. It's a constant. We don't wait for it. We prepare. Zenel turned slowly. Your species stores its own vulnerability. Halric shook his head. No. We store our resilience. Neither spoke for a long moment. Eventually, Zenel stepped back from the units. I wish to contribute. Halric blinked. You want to give blood? No, Zenel said quickly. But I possess knowledge of biosynthesis techniques. My people can replicate compatible plasma analogs in limited quantities. It is not traditional, but it may assist. Halric grinned. That's more than enough. Zenel hesitated, then nodded. As they exited the archive, Howrick pulled out a small data puck and handed it over. What is this? Zenel asked. List of current shortages, Howrick said. If your tech can help, start there. Zenel accepted it without a word and walked off down the corridor. Howrick watched him go, then leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. One step at a time. Because this was expected. It was late afternoon by station cycle, and the auxiliary med lab smelled faintly of synthetic antiseptic, stale protein bars, and something that reminded Zenel of warm mineral paste, a comfort scent for his species, though he suspected that wasn't intentional. The room was modest. 3 long benches, 2 portable centrifuges, and a pair of nutrient gel dispensers, one malfunctioning and blinking a soft orange warning no one seemed in a hurry to fix. Zenel adjusted the magnetic clamps on the portable plasma synthesis rig he'd brought from Creso. It stood upright like a chrome obelisk, humming gently, and blinked green when ready. Howrick leaned against the far wall near a storage cabinet, arms crossed, chewing on a piece of dried mango like it was a negotiation tactic. You're sure this thing won't explode? He asked finally through the mango. It is incapable of combustion, Zenel replied. It is not a weapon. I've seen our coffee machines do worse. Zenel touched a control node and the top of the rig hissed open, revealing a lattice of tubes and a rotating gel chamber. This model distills analog plasma from base nutrient compounds and trace elements. It will require calibration to human-compatible viscosity and protein density. Sounds fancy, Howrick said, then walked over and peered inside. So how long till it starts spitting out fake blood? It is not fake, Zenel corrected. It is functionally equivalent within emergency parameters. The rig requires 27 minutes to complete 1 unit. Howrick raised an eyebrow. That's slow. Zenel's membranes flushed pale blue. This is a field model, not a mass production unit. Howrick held up his hands. Hey, I'm not judging. I just know how fast things go wrong around here. The door slid open with a soft chime and a tall, angular figure stepped in. Dr. Renna, a Lervethian trauma specialist with a skeletal frame and a translucent veil that shimmered faintly with every movement. I was told there would be a demonstration, she said, her voice flat and unhurried. Zenel gestured toward the synthesizer. The prototype is operational. I have configured the first cycle to match human plasma profiles within a tolerance of 3%. Dr. Renna moved closer, her long fingers twitching minutely as she examined the output chamber. Your design uses protein scaffolds derived from Creso algae. That's not standard. It is adaptive, Zenel said. The molecular structure binds with human albumin analogs under thermal stabilization. Howrick gave a low whistle. That sounds like you're saying it works. Dr. Renna didn't look up. Possibly, but we'll need human verification. Howrick raised a hand. You need a lab rat? Zenel blinked. You are volunteering? Why not? I've got healthy vitals, no meds, and I'm not squeamish about needles. You are frequently too casual about your physical integrity, Zenel muttered. That's because it's not integrity if it breaks under pressure. Dr. Renna gestured toward the adjacent bench. Sit. I'll monitor vitals. Howrick dropped into the seat and rolled up his sleeve while Zenel inserted a sterile cartridge into the machine. The synthesized plasma flowed into a small collection pouch, a pale amber fluid that shimmered faintly under the lights. How much of that stuff do you have to run before it's useful? Howrick asked, watching the fluid fill. Each cycle yields 1 unit, Zenel said. I can produce 5 before the filtration matrix must be replaced. 5 units a day isn't nothing, Howrick said. That's 5 people who don't bleed out in a hallway. Dr. Renna connected the pouch to a slow drip 4 and inserted the catheter into Howrick's arm. We'll monitor for any signs of systemic rejection. Zenel stared at the tube. There should be none. I adjusted the electrolyte balance to match type O negative compatibility thresholds. Howrick leaned back. Feels like saline. No offense, but your fake blood's kind of boring. That is the desired outcome, Zenel said. Minutes ticked by. Dr. Renna continued her quiet observations, occasionally noting fluctuations on the console. Howrick yawned twice, checked his pulse manually once, and began humming a tune Zenel couldn't identify but found oddly dissonant. At exactly 26 minutes, the 4 line was removed. No fever, Renna said. No rash. No drop in blood pressure. No nausea. Zenel exhaled. Then it is viable? As an emergency substitute, she said. It will not replace actual blood, but for frontline stabilization this could work. Howrick sat up. So we've got a crasofield rig that makes crisis juice. I like it. Zenel allowed his inner membranes to shift to a satisfied shade of pale green. Outside in the corridor, the station's overhead lighting dimmed slightly, a routine cycle shift. The hallway was quiet, punctuated only by the distant hum of maintenance drones. Zenel closed the rig's top hatch and powered it down. I will donate the schematic to the Medical Guild's open archive. Halric nodded. That's generous. It is practical, Zenel said. If this reduces dependence on stored donations, it may prevent critical shortages. They walked together toward the lift, passing a trio of young trainees in orange scrubs. One of them, a squat, fur-covered being with a single eye, waved at Halric. You've got fans, Zenel observed. They saw me take a plasma bag to the face last week, Halric said. Long story. I do not require the details. At the lift they paused. Zenel looked sideways. I understand now why you said it was routine. Halric tilted his head. Yeah. It is not because it is easy. It is because it must be done, regardless of difficulty. Exactly, Halric said. You get it. Zenel's eyes narrowed slightly. I still find the fainting embarrassing. Halric grinned. Then don't do it again. I will attempt restraint. The lift arrived with a soft chime. As the doors closed behind them, Zenel folded his arms behind his back. Posture relaxed for the first time since he'd arrived on the station. They rode in silence. Down in the medical wing, 5 new units of synthesized plasma waited in cold storage. No one cheered. No ceremony marked their arrival. But they would be used. Quietly. Without fanfare. Because that too was routine.